Hello, everyone. Welcome to this member brief. This is a fun one for me. I recently met an amazing guy, Bobby, who you see on screen here, and I'm very excited to share more with you, and especially have him share his experiences. Uh, I wanted to call Bobby Zelig, but that's kind of an old reference from the '80s, and Bobby has a different term, so I'm going to let him share that with you in a moment. But Bobby is this ridiculously experienced founder, operator in the tech startup world. He's been in some amazing places when some amazing things were happening. Had his fingers on the buttons along the way, and I've had a number of occasions now to speak with Bobby. And every time, Bobby, I speak with you, I leave energized and my mind reeling with ideas. So, and I'm grateful that for that. Thank you. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to dig in, double click on some of your experiences, the perspective that that's given you, and to do that, I need you to share the things that you think were most formative for you in that very long career. Look, we could spend an hour talking about just the things you did factually in the last 30 years. I don't want to do that. I want to pick at your brain from the inside. So we're going to start, Bobby, with you sharing those most important parts of the journey, where you were at, what happened, what was that like, and then we'll go into some of the things that you care most about that experience. So share with everybody. It's just incredible. I'm so excited. Thank you for doing this.
Most certainly. Thanks, first of all, for having me. I'm blessed to have the stories to share, and probably more fortunate to encounter folks like yourself that not only want for us to share them with others, but you have a platform in which we can actually do it. And we were joking around earlier, maybe it's my guilty background of giving. And so I love doing these things for obvious reasons. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. And I've been super blessed of 37 years. I feel like the Forrest Gump of our industry. And we're actually working on a presentation where we take that storyline. And if you really want to know it, it falls an arc line, which is what were the licensing models for technology? Then what was the go-to-market? Then where would we consume them? And what does tomorrow look like? Because it doesn't look like yesterday. So it's been a phenomenal exercise for about the last 6 weeks. And we'll have it done for the Ben Venture Conference, actually, where we'll debut it next week. So I'm hoping it comes together rather quickly.
That's terrific. Can you share a little bit? It's interesting for you to take the time and effort to map out and to be thoughtful about that trajectory. What inspired you to even do that?
Great question. So what I learned, what my successes can be truly attributed to, besides hard work, chopping wood, and I had a founder and a CEO that had told me, Alfred Schwang, actually from BEA, the A in BEA, we have to be masochists to be founders. And sometimes you almost have to be the masochist to join the founder on their journey, depending on when you jump on that bandwagon, because it truly is a torturous journey. It's very rarely a walk in the park. And so if I can help by seeing around corners, no false starts, and sharing some of those things. So I call it, I'm a student of consumption. And I was blessed to enter this industry 37 years ago, and I joined the largest Whirlpool and RCA distributor in America. And that made people are like, those names, what are those? You sold appliances. But from the consumerization of society, as we'll call it, those were the second things we bought after a house and a car. And so if we truly tried to map and look at what were those networks like, what was that ecosystem that allowed that to happen? And so by the way, those models have all followed what we do today, from farm equipment and John Deere dealerships to car dealerships to all the way down through. And it's been really interesting. And we'll come back, because I would have never, ever guessed. Well, we're going to leapfrog real quick, because I'm going to ask you a question that would to all the way where, Sears Roebuck was the catalog, then it was decimated. Yeah. Then we had Amazon put everyone out of business only to open their own stores again. And so you start seeing what's old is new. And so it's really rather interesting. So I love understanding that. And then really what drove those models And then it really comes from, for our industry, I would say the licensing model is what drove everything from how I would support you, how I would around that. And so fast forward today when we're in a consumption-based economy, which is filling your gas up in the tank. The study is really showing it's back to the 80s and 90s again, which is about wallet share, market share, because the CFO's only got $10 and you're not going to create an 11, 12, 13. And you know this, there's every startup trying to get one of those dollars. And so unless you align to that mission criticality associated with it, you're going to get squeezed out. And that's why we saw companies in our past like Sun Microsystems shoot up and own such a big 40% of the market, which is pretty big. Like now I would, because they would come to you and they would say, what do you need? And they had hardware and they had software and they had storage and they had compute and everything. So you could get your wallet share. Today, that still is in effect. And so I'm going to ask you now, Bob, a question. Where did Salesforce's top 3 biggest deals come from last quarter? So this is like timely.
Oh, interesting. Some non-technical industry.
Kind of ish.
Well, all right. You stumped me.
The AWS marketplace.
Ah.
All right, so I'm going to AWS to buy my Salesforce software without doing a contract with Salesforce. Just think about that. So what happened? AWS went into the CIO, CFO and said, give me all your money and I'll let you buy whatever you want here. Wallet share, market share. So if they start getting all of that, and by the way, this is no different than the consumerization. If you look at my credit card bill, 60% of it's Amazon purchases. Why? It's so easy, click, 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 click. And they're doing the same thing for business. So it's going to be truly rather interesting to see what this next decade really has based upon where the technology intersection is.
Well, take a second now and touch some points in your history, Salesforce being one of them, and just walk us through a few of those bullet points, and not just the big fancy flashy ones, but some stuff that didn't work too.
Let's jump in with the Whirlpool comment. So I joined this distributor. And their grandparents had started the company with retreaded tires. And the reason I'm sharing this is you create a model, you can put anything in the machine. Today, it's one of the last ones standing. The 2 sons run it. It's called D&H Distributing, and it's an $8 billion company. It's an ESOP. All my friends I got jobs are either retired and enjoying life or about to retire because it's a great place to have worked. And in that 7 years, I was at the birth of the PC industry. And so from the x88 all the way to the 486 and beyond. And so if you think about that 7-year trajectory, most of what we touched fell into that decade. And that was because we had never purchased things like that before. And it goes back to, we wouldn't have ended up with PCs on desktops without what type of channel partners?
You stumped me.
A VAR. Value-added reseller. They came and added the value, put the stuff together, showed you how they stumped you because you didn't need it because you're smart enough to put your computers together. But when you look at ubiquity and modeling and across America, there's always someone in that ecosystem that will arise to help people because you need that. No one ever can do it by themselves. We've proven out. So that works. So I jumped into distribution. I got to see everything and a lot of roadkill and carnage along the way. And many, many times I thought about jumping on to a company. And there was this one that truly caught my attention. They were small. And I'll be honest, what really caught my attention was I 4x'd my salary. I would love to tell you it was like a million other things, but I'm in Pennsylvania. I skipped schools, so I'm happy making what I was making. And I joined a rocket ship, and we grew from 30 million to 1.5 billion, and we're the fastest growing company in the world for the first half of the 90s. And the third after Intel and Microsoft to reach 100 million users. And we wouldn't be here without us. We created sound. So the Sound Blaster, and that allowed us to truly create, today they call it CAC and LTV. We did that before people could even mention those words. We took a lot of pages out of the consumerization. So if you ever went into a Best Buy, we were the first, we called it the Ralph Lauren pop-up. And the reason that was important is you went to get a PC, they were all just chunks of metal. And in our Ralph Lauren pop-up, because if you go into a Bloomingdale's or a Macy's, the one store within a store that was the original was the Polo store. And you could experience multimedia. And we ended up employing these MBAs, multimedia business associates, that went to the CompUSAs and the Best Buys. And when you came in on the weekend, because they advertised in those flyers, we would show you what you needed. And the next thing you know, it sort of spurned that whole industry. And that took me all the way to the beginning of the internet in the late 90s. And I've always, my roots in distribution made me sort of always wonder what's next.
Mhm.
And that's truly what excites me. My wife likes to say it's the pointy piece of the spear. So to your point, sometimes you fall off the earth because there's nothing there to poke at. And it was interesting. It was early days of the internet. And I followed our COO again. One of my tenets is trust. And I think that the very important thing in this industry as a whole, who to trust, how to trust, and who we do business with. And Larry ended up going through a divorce and stopped coming to the office. And I was running our commercial business team. And the board asked me to step up and be the CEO. And so I thought about it over the weekend, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into, of course. And by Monday, I said yes with some conditions. We have to fire half the company, our burn's too high. And I'm like the things that I just instinctively knew from being a business unit runner. Because creative, I was blessed. I had a 600, here I am 30 running a $600 million group. That's bigger than most companies ever aspire to get to be. And so when you have that large of a set of responsibilities and you ship a physical product and you actually have to forecast because you got to manufacture it, there's a lot to the business model compared to today where it's, download your software, we don't ship stuff, go in and go there. So it really lays on the disciplines and the rigor associated with short-term, long-term planning, metrics driven because data doesn't lie, all things that the industry eventually caught up to. But I'll argue that's what propelled us to be our leader. And so I took a lot of that and made it part of who I am and my personality and characteristics. And so I'm definitely a measurer. And it was interesting. I had a call 2 days ago from a former employee to thank me for holding him accountable. And I was like, John, why'd you call and thank me? He goes, I was reflecting on this job interview and I had never had a boss hold me more accountable. And I hated it at the time. But what I realized was it made me show this company the results going through the interview that I was never able to do before I worked for you. I thought, oh, I met you late in life. This is pretty bad.
Yeah,
So if we could teach early on, which is why I teach a class at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, so I can give some of these fundamentals out. But in the internet space, it was early 99, so you can imagine pipes weren't fat. There was no monetization models. But we did a Britney Spears concert online with Warner Brothers, and 10,000 people showed up, and it crippled the site. And so we realized, yes, this is true, because it was dial-up modems back then.
yeah.
We ended up packaging the company up, and one of our investors was OpenText, and they had invested in us for the communication live layer. And so eventually they just acquired the assets. And that was my first transaction. I thought, okay, it was a great feeling because I was writing payroll checks. When you say yes to the CEO role, you don't really know your whole job, and only job is keep gas in the tank to pay the bills. And so I'd gotten a little over my skis, but I knew we had a couple $1 million deal that I did coming in. So I was confident enough to do that. My wife eventually found out, and needless to say, I'm never allowed to do that again. And so they got the software. It ended up changing and transforming their business. But I saw something super special, and I say that not lightly, and so special that I invested myself personally. And now I'm thinking this business stuff's easy. Well, it's not. It's not. And this is my first failure. And I invested 7 figures of my own money and propped the team up. And 18 months later, we're showing our product, and we had 6 pilot paying customers. And Sun Microsystems was one, Amazon was one, and they were all household names. And 2001 hit.
Oh,
which so you say, oh, and anyone else?
I was there. Yeah,
I was there. And we had just launched our company. So at this point in time, the internet was stateless, right? Everything was page-based because that's how websites were built. Request a page, it would deliver it. You had huge cart abandonment. And what I had seen at this communication company was this first time real-timeness happening on the web. And so we created a company called State Software. Why? The web was stateless. Our whole goal was to make it stateful. And because the team had, but I let out, I'm always enamored by technologists. So this group of people in 1985 created the first online chat rooms at Lucasfilm. So when I start thinking about like really longevity and deep roots, I was just graduating high school when they were building this stuff. So just think of their brain trust at a point in time where none of this was even, and Randy Farmer is still one of the world's renowned community experts. And so when you've been doing this for 50 years, you just gain such knowledge people can't even comprehend. And what I had seen was this real timeness. So we start State Software. We launched at the demo conference. And we were lined up all alphabetically. So I was state software. There's this guy next to me. He worked for a company that was SA called Salesforce. Usually that's my background in the background. So I got to meet Mark, and that's where we became friendly and friends at the beginning. And so I thought we were going to sell the company. I spent a fair amount of time with the three obvious folks because we were part of the develop environment. We gave the real-time experience. We didn't get money, so we open sourced it. And I got my first foray into what open source is and its meaningful impact. Today, that's called JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. The world uses it. So, my biggest failure happened to be the biggest success for the world is we got to use it, and literally 99% of the world consumes it on a daily basis. So that feels great.
I used it yesterday.
Didn't make any money, but it feels great. But it really allowed me to have a perspective that I had not seen at this point in time in my career. And so I ended up joining BEA. Mark wanted me to join him. My wife's like, look, man, we're starting a family. You need a real job. You need a paycheck. So I took the job at BEA, and I managed our joint venture with Intel, which was really important at the beginning of owning the internet, because there was two. It was, you were either Sun World, .NET or J2E, and we own the J2E space. Literally, every 9 out of 10 telcos, 9 out of 10 financial institutions, and really, what we had was the best batteries, and every application needed batteries to power it. And our kiss of death was not acquiring an open source company called JBoss, because that A and that BA that I had referenced didn't want to tarnish the brand, because no one wanted to believe open source was going to eat the lunch, but it was inevitable. And it ultimately did across all software stacks, as you know, today. And in that role with BA, I got to string everything together, and it propped me back up to another 500 million plus group. So I had all of our ISVs that built on top of us. And this is where I got to see the magic of leverage. So I had a team of about 10 people, maybe call it 16, including the technical folks. And we managed 26,000 people that built on our platform called ISVs. And these people just sent me checks every month called royalties. And for the first time, I'm thinking, this is like an ATM machine. What's going on here? And then I got to see the support models, which is really like an ATM machine, because back then you paid 21% of your net list price on your deal. So you were just guaranteed money flowing, which is not the way it is, of course, today. And with that, I spent about 2.5, almost 3 years. And I would have never been as successful at Salesforce had I not taken that role, because it allowed me to see something that we were going to evolve the cloud into. And I don't believe many people had that type of insight, where I traveled the world, was powering everyone, but charging them for that. And that became sort of the genesis and basis of the modeling that we built to create the first app store. By the way, that was the AppExchange's name. And been punched in the head or mouth or stomach twice by Steve Jobs. That was one of them, when he took my product name. So that was a personal thing. And that's a different story. Maybe we'll get to if you ask questions on that later. And with that, I left BA and joined Mark on the quest. And we went, now they were big, they were 60 million. So I was allowed to go to a company that had some not making my revenue. And I was blessed to build the AppExchange, which then allowed me to sort of be the grandfather of the next 10,000 cloud companies that came out. So we built everything on how to get you on board, how to train you, how to teach you, how to price it. And so if you think about the beginning, there was anything like it. And we tried to design it in a manner and in which it couldn't be toppled over. And that's within itself a whole different industry. And we did it because of the way in which we modeled your addiction to us. And in doing so, it just passed $1 trillion this past Dreamforce last month. So when you think of size and magnitude, it doesn't get bigger than that. And that's one hell of an ecosystem. And I'm more proud that Microsoft hasn't knocked it off. SAP hasn't knocked it off. Google can't complete. And those people up in Seattle are still just trying to get it. Now, each one of those marketplaces is doing something uniquely different, which is why I told you I'm a student of them, trying to understand. And that's why I can reference what's going on. And I'm a little truly amazed at how those marketplaces are transforming this next decade of technology consumption, which is going to be very, very interesting.
So Bobby, I want to double click on something. So I see that in the early days of your career, the epiphany was distribution. And I'm sure that has stuck with you. It started there. It's still with you. The licensing part, the beauty of the model, I get that. When you think about, and you have perspective here. You work with a lot of startups, and they're not all doing enterprise software with licensing, right? There's no end to the types of markets that startups need to figure out distribution in. When you think about all the lessons you've learned in distribution, are there patterns, and especially the principles that underlie those patterns? Like,
That's a great question. That's $1 million question. I stole the idea and the basis for what we build from a company up in Redmond called Microsoft. And so think about it this way. Their partner ecosystem, their children don't eat, they don't wear clothing, they don't go to school unless they push Microsoft products. And so I had this boss where he said, partnerships, ecosystem, whatever we want to call it, there's this continuum, and some you love a little and some you love a lot, but you got to love them all, because if you don't, they'll love someone else. And the two companies that have done the most, in my opinion, Cisco and Microsoft. Why? They have these educational programs, they have CNEs, they understand the importance to educate the market to a point. It's going to be very interesting how important is that education moving forward, and what does it mean? And what you end up creating there is this parasitic, symbiotic addiction of an ecosystem where everybody wins. And in a situation when everybody wins, no one fights. And you really can flourish and grow at an unprecedented pace, which is why in each one of those decades, I was fortunate enough to be at the early stages of the fastest growing company in those decades. I mean, think about that 3 times, and it's really, really difficult to have achieved. And it wasn't just picking the right technology, it was deploying the right methodologies to go to market to maximize the opportunity to get wallet share, market share.
So under the umbrella of distribution, competent distribution gets you wallet share, market share, right? If you don't have distribution, and this is one of my favorite things, that's why I want to dig a little deeper. I've seen countless startups that have fantastic product, solves a big problem, ridiculously sharp technical team, they can build the product, and they can't sell it. They can't work out distribution. They can't work out, how do I identify my customers, reach them, close them, nurture them, the things that actually build the business, not just a product. And so your insights into distribution, I really want to hear like the principle of distribution. Like here's like, it's a wellness app, right? Or it's an IoT ag tech, or it's enterprise software, it's AI, blah blah blah. Like, what are there for, maybe there aren't, maybe everything is so distinct that there isn't any patterns or principles that underlie those. But broadly, like, how does a founder modify the way they think and approach the problem of distribution? What are the guides?
All right. So this is well known, and this happened to me yesterday. I talked to a third-time founder, and we were going through this conversation. And all first-time founders build great products. And because he told me, look, I spent 18 months coding, and then I went and showed people. I go, what did they think when you showed it to them? They're like, what the hell did you build? He goes, the second time I talked to 450 people before I wrote one line of code, and we built a company and sold it quickly. So second-time founders build distribution machines. Because they realize how hard that is, that the importance that if you think about it when you're going to build or choose what you want to go build, you understand at least what that would be. We'll go back to what I learned in the Whirlpool RCA. It's a customer coverage model. So what did they have? They had warehouses across America that could get you the thing the next day or 2 days. Guess what? That's no different than Amazon Prime today. So those things still came that gets you that distribution excellence. So if you have a customer coverage model, that means I can be same day, next day, someday, one day, this way. People understand the importance. By the way, we got sensors in ceilings by discovering that same thing, which is lighting takes 6 to 8 weeks, but there was one manufacturer that did same week manufacturing. Guess what? I could get into that same week. So you really have to, and by the way, that's why he ended up winning all of the business in Silicon Valley, because the buildings were going up so fast. But anyway, I'll go back to time and speed to market definitely are your advantage. And that's no different than what your coverage model is. You don't have to be first and you don't have to be the best. You just have to make sure you serve your customers the best.
That's good advice. So then on sort of licensing as a pricing model, right? And the last decade has been dominated for sure by SaaS as a monetization model. What do you see as especially as the market changes now, and it seems like historically something becomes valuable and then everybody's after it, and then it becomes a commodity, and then it's the next thing, and then it's the next thing, and it follows that pattern. And when you look at SaaS software, that business model it appears, from what I can tell, to be it's being disrupted by AI. And just because you got this software that can, do something for 29 or 299 or $29,000 a month, AI, the business model is different for AI, and all the things that it can solve. And these SaaS companies that were, high and mighty for so long, many of them now I think are struggling because you can get so much value out of so little resource. How do you see business models over the next decade, or even the next 3 years, frankly?
So I think they're struggling because they shouldn't have been here in the first place. We were oversassed because VCs are greedy. We don't need 10 companies that do 10 to the same thing. It's not fair to a consumer. How do you even evaluate them? Imagine the enterprise observability. Like what are you going to do? You don't have the time, the money, the resources. But AI is going to be interesting. What is the ecosystem that will roll it out? Will it be self-deploying? Is ServiceNow this new software? What probably excites me most is the next billion-dollar company could potentially have just 10 people in it. And we've never seen this before.
Yeah.
Ever. And when you start thinking about that magnitude, now, I'll give you a great example. When I was at Twilio, part of you had said something, the commoditization so that anyone could consume the technology and create a business out of something that thrills me too, like what the art of the possible. And so we'll play a little guessing game here. Our whole goal was to show that you could do anything with a text, and it was really difficult early on. People couldn't spell it, didn't know what to do with it. And eventually we did, and we can come back to the use case suitcase where I could stick a text anywhere in your business and you'd be blown away. But that didn't do me any good because it's still the Fortune 500. So our whole goal was, could I have Bob Crimmins become a millionaire through helping him create an app? And it had to be a text basis one. And the answer is 100% yes. So then we traveled the world because we'd had these people going out and showing you what you could do with the text, but none of it was anything that you could do something meaningful with. And so I got tasked something at Salesforce by Mark that made me really the genesis of the AppExchange. And he said, Bobby, I need you to get everybody's email address at a company. Sell CRM. How would I ever do that? Well, you have apps for every department. And so all of a sudden you can attack everyone. So I started thinking, that made me see the ubiquity one. What can we go attack that could be great? So we're in Asia and we're in Sri Lanka. And we're doing a hackathon, and we find the sparks start flying in the meeting, in the hackathon. And it turns out we helped this young man build an app, and he was sending a text a day out, and it was for religion. What religion is it?
Hindu?
No, you're close. They pray every day.
Muslim?
Bingo. So he created a prayer app so that every Muslim for just $1 a month could say the same prayer. Do you know how many Muslims there are in this world?
Many.
1 billion.
Mm.
Needless to say, he became a millionaire overnight by having the same prayer text to the same people about a religion that didn't change their life. And he just intersected it in a meaningful way to them that changed his life. And so I think that's a great example. And I could cite many, many, many more of those where if you have a platform and enabling technology, you probably saw me light up a little bit. That's what I like to see. How do we help others take advantage of technology to change lives? And I have a saying, change lives.
You know what that makes me think about? Drug development follows a kind of a pattern. And the more sort of popular the disorder or the disease, the more funding it gets because the more pills you can sell, right? And then there's the diseases that for the people who have them, they're just as bad as the big bad ones, but there's very much less research development for treatments and whatnot. And it strikes me as you were talking that yes, if you want to be a founder and want to be wildly successful, go after these massive opportunities, massive problems with billions of people who are potential customers. But what about all the other things that just have to get solved? Like, not everything is a unicorn, right? If you
No,
end
no.
up with a unicorn in your lap, good for you. Meanwhile, there are thousands of other problems that entrepreneurs can solve. How do you translate these really big, remarkable things that you've been a part of down to, oh yeah, that's probably going to be a $20 million exit, but that's a really good thing.
So good thing is it's in the feature, or it just didn't catch fire?
Well, 20 million, small market, it did what it could do. It just couldn't go any further, right? 50 million, 100 million, 500 million. Each one of those steps is less than $1 trillion app marketplace, right?
Oh, I
The
see. So, yeah, it's 1, 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, 100,
Yeah,
250.
whatever it turns out to, right? Because I think we have this urge in the startup world to admire more the biggest things and admire less the smaller things. But the smaller things, those are important. Those still also have to get settled and solved, and right. And there's so much value for humanity in this, the smaller things that don't turn out to be unicorns.
Right. You and I were joking about that the other day, where it's people, is it venture scale fundable? And
Yeah.
those are the words that really come into play. But let's just touch on your drug scenario for a second. It's one area that I've stayed away from just because of the FDA approval, and it's just a little bit of a wacky world. But now, to your point, it is all a consolidation world because innovation doesn't happen at these big companies. So if I was in that realm, I would go create something I knew would get acquired, which really sucks, because if we actually had the government paying for our healthcare instead of us paying for healthcare, 99% of the diseases would be cured, because they would have never allowed these people to charge that type of money. Most diseases are curable. We choose not to go after them for what you just said. There's not enough size of the prize at the end of that. But this is where AI is going to change that. You and I are going to have, but in our lifetime, we will have drugs for us. I'm going to go in, they're going to take my blood. They're going to go, you got blah, blah, blah. This is your concoction. And it's going to be Bobby's cocktail, which I'm probably most excited about. And it's going to be affordable. That's got to happen in the next decade. The drug ailment componentry, though, is unless you have a pipeline for the things that are going to make the impact, you never get out of it. But I do believe that because you can have a 20 or a $50 million company and an exit, that we're going to start seeing those. Now, what I would love to know is, this is going to be a crazy thought. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. What other industries will end up being like Thrashio? So do you know who that is?
I don't think I do.
All right. So they went and they realized on the AWS or on the Amazon marketplace, there's 50 companies doing $2 million. Well, they all do the same thing. They have customers, they make a product, they bill you, they get ratings, they do this. So if you pull $52 million companies together, what do you have? $100 million
Great.
company.
Yes. Yeah.
So they went and strung a bunch. Now they have a lot of problems and issues to post that, but it showed that in these marketplaces, you might be able to aggregate things and almost create a suite or create a company within the company because of the fragmentation of that long tail.
Yeah.
Which is really
And
what you're saying, the long tail.
So Bobby, you observe that, they observe that, and they pulled it off, I assume. But what is the mental pattern that takes you into that realization, that recognition that, like, 'cause one of the things I was struck by a couple of conversations we've had is that you have something in mind at the beginning. When you had some of the conversations we had, you couldn't wait to get to the end, and you knew the line it was going to take, right? And I'm curious, like, insight to me is a really important thing, and I think so many founders. That's why a second time founder talks to 450 people first. They had an insight, right? They didn't know that before. They thought that what you do is you build a great product, and then everybody flocks to you and they pay you money. Doesn't happen that way very often. Instead, you ask those people what they will pay for, what you should build, and then go do that for them, and then see where it goes. But that insight, are there shortcuts? I guess, I see, I meet and work with so many early founders, first time, maybe second time founders, and it's something of a mission for me to try to figure out, like, how can I convey a way of thinking about things that will allow them to shortcut some of those challenges that we see.
So we call it No False Starts, and we'll have a series coming out early next year on what are the most common false starts founders based on stage do, and it'll just be content that we'll end up giving away. And it's in an effort to help them not waste money. So I'm a helper, and usually I get called in by the VC. Oh, this company raised money, we spent it, we think there's a great product. Can you help us? Well, look, I'm like, why didn't I meet you, $22 million ago? Right? We got four in the bank. We're not going to be able to get out of our own way. What's going to happen? Yada, yada, yada. And so it's unfortunate. And so for founders, what I almost always say is find someone you can trust to talk to. We're all in this together, and a lot of people will listen. You really do have pain and anguish, and it's lonely as a founder. There's no one to talk to. You can't share with a board member. You can't tell your team because they'll leave you. You tell your spouse she's out of the house. I mean, all of those things. I don't have an answer, but the peer networking group thing is clearly something that I've seen somewhat work. But your peer needs to know what they're talking about and doing too. Otherwise, they're taking you down a dark alley that they don't know what's down there.
Yeah, the true value of building a network of experienced founders, and some good investors who will also be that for you,
Right.
or be that for you. Well, what I want to do now, and we chat a little bit about this, so I know it's okay. So I want to open up for Q&A. If you have questions, ideas that you want Bobby's input on, put those in the Q&A section. Do we have a Q&A section? I don't see a Q&A. Where's the chat? Oh, just put them in the chat, I guess. Oh, no, there it is. Q&A. And do we have anything in there? Not yet. So go ahead. I'm going to keep talking to Bobby because it's fun. But you guys, if you have specific questions that you want to ask Bobby, start thinking about those now. So Bobby, going forward, you've got your mind wrapped around a few things. I probably know 10% just from our conversations. Tell me what you're excited about, and especially in the way, like, do you see continuity between this ridiculous Forrest Gump career you've had to this point in your life now, and how did that perspective that you gained, did it lead to something? Are you on something now that's compelling for you that you think came out of your experience, or is it just another new thing?
A little bit of both. So this is a good question. So probably no surprise, I'm really into Gen AI, attacking at a point where I believe it's most applicable from an experiential perspective, so that I could go in and say, I know these problems exist. I've managed these departments or these companies. These are real problems, so people can't lie. And the reason I say that is I was there for no software. So I will be there for no applications. And Gen AI will be the way in which we start getting rid of that. We don't need, the company I'm working with, I'm referring to, is we're attacking tickets. Everyone thinks the world runs on Dunkin'. The world runs on tickets. There's 500 million tickets opened every day, whether I need a new computer, a password reset, or my nuclear power plant needs to be reset. I mean, just think about that same ticket as for the trigger for all of those. And the ticket never needed to be opened because the question could be answered by the machine, because you don't have to really, So I start thinking back to the app server days. If I could put the Intel inside and the brains to answer your question in your app, could I start leapfrogging what next generation customer support and service looks like? And the reason that's important is I'm attacking the cost of goods, which is the elusive profitability CFOs look for. I'm not going after your cost of sales. So it might be a nuance for some folks, but it's a way in which I get ROI immediately. Now, this is what you asked that's really interesting. We've been doing some secret testing because pricing to me is a moat. And if you do it right, you can win regardless. And so I'm dabbling with a few AI companies doing different things to see how we can affect these pricing models. And so one in particular is an outsourced firm who supplies bodies for a group of people that can't hire them fast enough. And so we're meeting with them and I go, what do you charge per body and what do they do and how's that act and what are the attendance and sick rate and all that? And is we charge $45 an hour. And of course they call in sick and they do these things. And how many people are you short for your capacity of the job that needs to be done? About 8 to 10. What if I could do it for half the price and give you a digital body? How would you do that? Well, you just told me your workload. You just told me the people you have to hire. What if I could do it for a fraction of the cost and the headcount replacement? How would you do that? So now we're selling body replacements versus technology that let me talk to the CFO. And some of our CFO conversations have gone, what about for $1 a day, I can give you unlimited AI for your employee? You give them coffee, you give them a gym membership, you give them snacks that makes them fat, makes them diabetic. It does nothing for them. What if they had a better day at work, got an answer and could actually go home happy? For $1 a day, what would you do? And I start showing them things. So it's going to be very interesting how the AI overlay for us humans to make us superhuman and how corporations, again, licensing the technology that gets us to get to the ubiquity so that everybody can have a better day tomorrow. So we're playing around. I haven't seen anyone doing some of these, which is why I'm also sharing them. We're playing around with some interesting pricing models that will allow us to get what I call lightning in a bottle around AI by talking to the ultimate decision maker, the CFO, by saving him money and getting him profitable. That's all he cares about. And by the way, so same with your board, same with your employees.
So what's interesting about that to me, Bobby, is you know, there I'm sure there's a lot of uniqueness in what that solution is, but uniqueness in AI doesn't last very long. You get maybe a 3-month head start, and big piles of money don't lay around unattended very long. But the pricing model, you refer to that as a moat, and I haven't heard anyone talk about pricing as a differentiator uh, in order to basically win distribution. It's always about the feature, the value, blah blah blah, not the pricing model. That's fascinating because like I haven't seen. Anytime I see something in AI, get a pitch deck or something, I think, oh, that's novel, and then within 2 weeks, I've seen 7 more.
Of course you will. Yeah, that's always because it's so easy and cheap and a founder can do it. And Darren, we'll come right back to your question 1 second. But so at Twilio, pricing became our rocket fuel. Jeff struggled for 2 years to get past $5 million for 2 years straight. Why? Because every developer gave you $5. Well, you have 1 million developers always willing to give you $5 at any point in time. So you're never going to get above that. We did have 3 customers scratching the surface of what to do with that text. And we went from 5 million to 178 million in 18 months. Unheard of growth by the penny. The ASP was a penny.
Yeah.
Think of that volume, what we ended up attacking to solve and serve. And Bob, it was pricing. So I'm there about 6 months and it was a struggle. I got to be honest. It was hard. It was hard in trying to figure out what to do, how to explain what a Twilio is, how to even spell it. What do you go to? Like, it's just like, think about it. I see you grimacing. And in a board meeting, someone says, how are we working on pricing? And someone says, oh, Bobby's got that. So I have been thinking about it, of course, because you already have met me enough to know all I do is think about those things. And I hadn't really thought through, I had a hypothesis and a thesis, and I hadn't really tested it out. So at this board meeting, I get to unveil it. And now no one can say they like it or not because no one's heard about it before. And so I've been playing around with t-shirt size pricing. And because we were in the telco space, I tried to take a page out of a former book that we all learned, which was rollover minutes. So I looked at everybody in the room and I said, I'm just gonna ask you some question. What size shirt do you wear? And everyone knew their shirt. But you would know if you had to charge different amounts for a small, medium, or large that you were still buying that size shirt. And you knew what you could fit into in that shirt. Yeah, well, what does that have to do with text? Well, I've observed that no one knows how to budget a penny for a text, but I can sell them a $25,000 package, a $50,000 package, and a $100,000 package. Small, medium, large. You need an extra large. It's custom. Come to my bespoke tailor and I'll cut it out to you because I had to do worldwide routing and that became the deal desk. And that was really what sort of allowed us to explode. I could go into a place and tell you, here's what you're buying, and then teach you how to consume it. And then it became fuel. So the API pricing is just a precursor to SaaS. I mean, if we think about this, and all AI is leapfrog to AI and where we're going from APIs, right? So
Yeah.
there's so much, yeah. So it's really rather interesting in this consumption economy world, because if I'm not supporting you, I can go ahead and point my thing. Look, we had this company, we're having a problem with OpenAI. They didn't respond to a thing. The next day we were using another Anthropic and didn't skip a beat, and it didn't matter. And my $100,000 a month, they didn't even call to say, where's my 100K? It went to a new company and they're happy for my 1.2 to go to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Darian asked a question: in which scenarios does commercial open source software like MongoDB make the most sense? And I don't know. That's ambiguous to me, Darren. Maybe you can clarify this. But whether or not, as a consumer, as a business, whether or not using commercial software for a business, commercial open source, versus uh, as the company, the company itself, the MongoDB, the question is to them, like, when does it make sense to go that route? And like, you made that choice with state software to open source JSON, right? Uh, are there mile markers you look for if you've got a business, you got a software business, and it might be time to change?
So let's talk about the business. What business is Mongo in?
So I have a sense of commercial open source software as a service model, really.
100%. But I mean, like, what does their software do? Mongo DB. It's a database.
Yeah.
It's a database. So now think of how many databases are out there. Try selling one. You almost are forced to open source and create a model around it. And then if you look at the database, you're going to pick one that's unique to what your needs of your business model are. Like, you wouldn't use CouchDB for the same thing you would use Cockroach Database, which is versus MongoDB versus some other one. So a Postgres database. So I think choosing the technology that meets your needs and won't let you stumble, fumble, fail is the first part. The second layer is it commercially available or is it open source? Because what you need to do is meet your needs before you figure out your budgetary constraints. Now, some people, the best part about open source is Bob, you and I go start a company tomorrow and get a lot of software, have a software stack for free. Free is never free, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you had the engineers on your staff that knew MongoDB and could actually operate flying the machine without you having the people, that's when it makes sense. Because even though it's open source, you still need staff to manage, operate, and know all the tips, tricks, and how to bend it so that you can get the most out of your application, leveraging the database. It looks like there's a couple of questions pawning onto that one. Let's see what it says. As the company, as the database company. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that one might be shooting fish in a barrel. Let's think about some other ones, because there are a plethora of fantastic databases. Many of them are free. So why would you try to create a commercial model around something that was basically a free commodity of super high quality? But there are other more niche. Right?
Why do we say VARs exist? Because people don't know how to do the work. Like, again,
absolutely. Yeah.
So if you think about, all they're doing is packaging up open source, probably giving it to you in a manner that you can consume it, supporting documentation, and they can let you call them if you need help for something. Otherwise, you're looking at like, good luck, Chuck.
Yeah, but there'd be a point, right? A tipping point. A transition would happen from, we're a database company to now we're a services company. Here's a software, and we're going to show you how to use it and help you use it. And you're going to pay us for that. You're not going to pay us for the software. The software is free. Would you?
Red Hat, Linux, and moving down the list of
boom.
Yeah.
But does that feel like, as an open source software, or as a software company, you would need to have a certain critical mass before you could make that transition effectively? Because you said, I'm going to create an open source thing, and then I just go get customers, because there's no traction there yet.
It would depend the segment. Listen, I bet you could take open source for building software, and because everyone builds buildings and it's a very fragmented market, you might actually be able to make an impact in that space. I'm trying to think, it would be the characteristics of the market and the ecosystem that would allow you to actually take some free shit and make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, I'll go back to free is never free.
Right. Yeah. All right. Good. So, Bobby, are there some? Tell me now. I think we kind of got.
So Gen AI, we got down. So Gen AI takes me from no software to no applications. The next big area that I'm extremely passionate about is robotics. We have to bring manufacturing back to America. Look, we just, we're building 2 fabs in America. I mean, just think, we're worried about some other country attacking this little island so that we can have cars and microcomputers. Well, how can we not be self-sufficient here in America? I mean, it's kind of pathetic if you ask me. I've got a whole other talk track and tirade around that. And so I'm working. It's true. Come on. We did it to drugs. We saw how lazy we became as Americans during COVID when we ran out of the things that we should have been doing ourselves in our own country that we didn't want to, we put to other countries to do. So I've got, it's a laziness factor for me. So robotics is one particular area. And then I'm starting to see the middle of the long tail of industries really consume technology at a faster pace. And I think I think SaaS made them wake up. Government, education, places, right? Where before it was a laggard. And now, because it's easy, safe, and simple, they can consume it in a manner they would have never been able to do that before. And I think this is great for citizens, particularly public safety, that type of things. So robotics gets us there. And I'm passionate about children and our future. So education. And we took when someone said, well, what would you do about education? You didn't even go to college. I started thinking, well, you first got to get them there. And so our focus was on the transportation of getting the kids to school. And again, reimagining, if you could whiteboard it, what would it look like? Well, it wouldn't look like the yellow school bus. And so today we're transforming the largest transportation network in America, which happens to be school buses. They're bigger than planes, trains, taxis, and automobile transport, not personal automobile, but carrying of people on a daily basis when school is in session. It's our most precious asset. There's no seatbelts. We don't know where they are. And we got a school bus driver that ends up looking like the librarian. It's like, come on, these are my kids. And so we not only made the buses safer, we made them electric. And with the electric, they are a dual purpose back into the community so that you could actually light up hospitals with them. So now it's an asset, not a liability. And because it's electrified and what we're doing for these communities, we're doing 10-year, $150 million deals. So we're talking long timeline horizon impact on society deals. And because it's electrification modeling, we're getting what I call coupon clipping. And this is where you get the money from, called the government. Yes. And so if you understand these as a founder and you start stringing them together, GTM's not go to market, it's get the money. And it's how you're going to get the money differently, which is then the old traditional way. So those are some areas of excitement for me, I think, for the next 5 years for us. I'm really concerned about UBI, universal basic income. Will that be a reality? Will we get there? Will we be able to harness AI so that it could actually make us better and less dangerous? I mean, look, we just saw this, you and I, this past week with the port strike. Do you know that every other third world country, let me say this again, third world country has automated ports, let alone the most industrialized country supposedly in the world has something from the 1900s? We might as well have horse and cart buggies picking this stuff up. I mean, it's pathetic. And then we have one person hold America hostage. Come on, that's not fair. That's a terroristic, in my opinion, that's a terroristic threat. We're not going to ship things, you all suffer. Like, come on. We're going to automate. We're automating the ports. You're suffering. No jobs for you. The machines are going to do it. And people in America can eat and wipe their ass.
Well, it's a bold new world. There's going to be a lot of things that are unrecognizable in the next decade or two. Yeah. Hey, listen, we got another questions. So Krista's asking, we're entering the sales phase of our AI project. The lead systems we're getting offered, a range from $250 a month to $5,000 a month. 5,000 sounds better, but maybe harder. They're startup and they want to build the best possible product. Any advice?
Can I reread the question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Is it in the chat?
It's in the chat, yeah.
All right, because I'm in the Q&A area. All right, so let me see here. We're entering the sales phase of our AI project. Our lead systems we're getting offered range. All right, so it's a juxtaposed question, so maybe I can ask to frame it. And I don't know if we're allowed to let our audience ask lively things. We turn their mic on. So what I'm reading here is we're entering the phase of selling my product. Our lead systems we are offered range from 250 to 5,000. That means that company's offering to generate leads for you. Is that how you're reading it?
I'm going to invite Kristen. I'm going to
Yes.
invite you up.
All right,
Oh,
here's
there she is.
Hi. Hi,
I
everyone.
this will make it easier than doing a lost in translation moment so you answer as correctly as possible.
Sorry,
So
it was a little confusing. So what I meant was we're in the process of starting our sales. We already have a platform built for our AI, and we're getting lead systems like people who are offering us leads for businesses.
Oh,
And some of the lead systems are, we'll give you, this amount of businesses for 250 a month, but they're just regular businesses. And then we have other companies saying, we'll give you 5,000, for $5,000 a month, we'll give you 1,000 enterprise companies, like huge, like distributors. What do you want? Do you want to pay 250 a month and you don't know what you're getting, or do you want 1,000 enterprise businesses for 5,000 for us to reach out to, talk to, and hopefully the people that we sign up, we could offer them a free trial for a little while, like for 15 days. Plus, we would give them a smaller package while we're testing and getting feedback. And then with the feedback, we were going to build on their feedback, like on the enterprise companies. But we're just not sure which route to go because we are on a budget, because we are a startup. And if we take this $5,000 a month, that's a huge
no, you could give it to me. You could give it to me, and I probably would give you better leads than off my LinkedIn profile than they will give you. So let me ask you some questions.
Well, I'll keep that in mind.
No. So first of all, leads are like blood flow. They're the life of everything. So I think of it as oxygen, and I take it very, very, very serious because you're spending money for that oxygen. What are you selling?
We're selling like an AI basically twin of you, like your best salesperson. Not like a bot, but it's an authentic AI that you'll be able to put on your platform. It's a one line of code on your website, and it will be able to do the job of your best salesperson, or even you as the CEO, while you're sleeping. And there's also going to be a back end, like a platform that you as the CEO or your salesperson can sign in and see who contacted you, and can actually fine tune and tweak the way that the AI is answering, and can also download any PDFs, any kind of sales training into the AI. So it's going to be like an AI tool, but it's going to be all in one, where like some of the bots that you see now can only schedule or answer simplified questions. This is going to be tuned and fine-tuned and tweaked by you as the owner of the company or your best salesperson.
How will they know how to do that? And the reason I'm asking is you probably saw 2 weeks ago, Salesforce announced Agent Force. And they're going to go out and they're going to have an army of 100,000 people train people how to do this. And it was interesting. I think it's going to be wrong. They're going to train admins. I think it's wrong. I don't know many CEOs that are going to go and figure out how they're going to train their bot to do the front door work. So are you ultimately going to sell, do you think, to businesses that sell B2B or B2C?
Businesses that sell B2C and B2B. We could do both.
Right. You have to pick one. You can't do everything out. You're too small. You have vanilla ice cream. You got to find out who's going to buy your vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. So B2C.
All right. So then I would end up saying it's going to be a really noisy. I don't want to sound like a defeatist or a pessimist. It's a very, very, very noisy. Your go-to-market is going to matter, and what you associate yourself with. You heard us talk a little bit about the CFO and why they care about having this employee that can do all this work, because you can then offset not hiring an employee, which there's an actual cost to. But what would a perfect lead? What's your ICP?
The perfect lead is right now for us, the small business owner, like the spa, the contractor, someone that's not really good with their website or computers or AI or technology, because it is one line of code. So we're able to put that on their website for them as a service, so that automatically the AI is working for them and they don't have to do much. We initially do the back end of the AI for them, like we build the brain, but then they can add stuff into the platform, like if they have any new sales or new,
I'm with you. Yeah, I would attack
So it's
Yelp
kind
and
of like their
yeah,
own little Salesforce on the back end that they can add everything onto. So there's not a lot of work for them to do unless they want to get really serious with it and really build on the back on their platform, unless they have
so
a lot of material.
yeah, I would look to start thinking how, rather than your leads and worrying that, I would look, how would you attack uh, the website builders like a Wix and a Squarespace? I would look
Mhm.
to say, how can I take advantage of everybody on Yelp? Because guess what they have? A small business, and it's probably got a
Mhm.
website, and some of them even have Facebook websites because they don't even have websites because they're such a small business. And then the third that you said that triggered it is I might try to attack Angie's List, because all that really is a reverse marketing platform for that services company to actually find work with. It just going to. So what I heard from you saying, I'm going to be great for a sole proprietor where they need help work. They're going to not necessarily be tech savvy, and we could drop one line of code that does all these things for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And exactly what you just said with the website builders. We just talked about that, me and my co-founder. We were like, we're trying to target a market, but there's other bots out there. There's a lot of companies that already have these tech bots on there and that we're going to be competing with them. So we thought, wouldn't it be a good idea to kind of like partner with the different website builders and get a percentage and go after the little mom and pop shops that don't have a website, like they just have a Facebook page, like the bakeries or the spas, and then we build the website for them and put the AI in automatically, and we get a percentage and they get a percentage, and we kind of have a partnership. But I don't know how hard that will be, but
That's distribution.
That's
yeah.
distribution. It's interesting. I think of today's AI people as like, I don't know your age, but it was Scient, Viant, Sapient, Razorfish.
Mhm.
Those were all the people that helped people build websites, because 30 years ago, no one knew how to build a website. So hence what I'm saying is when these new technologies come in, there is an ecosystem that can create fire for you, but you have to
Mhm.
find out what that is. Um, um,
Kristen, if I could too, I would add just for this technical decision you have to make.
Yes.
You the You're so early that
Mhm.
if I had to bet a dollar, I'd bet that you actually don't know who your ICP is yet, and you're going to learn that as you start to get out in the market and learn who's not just a good customer that could get value out of it, but that is reachable in a cost-effective way, so that
Mhm.
your CAC to LTV makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
Small businesses are historically ridiculously hard. You're herding
Mhm.
cats. Not only are they not sophisticated with the computers, they're also not very sophisticated with marketing.
Mhm.
And the the aggregation points are the things to look for. And Bobby named several, of which
Yeah.
website builders is one of those. Uh, what I hear you say with leads, though, is you're going to go create your own magic with
Mhm.
direct contact. That's the opposite of distribution. There's no aggregation point there, right? There's no
Mhm.
common reference point where you know that some thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these small businesses, that's where they live. Facebook, perhaps, but Facebook, again, as Bobby said, really noisy, right?
Mhm.
Best of luck.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what we're like fine tuning and tweaking right now. We're trying to find what our market is and where we can kind of stand out because we do have competitors, right? So
oh
we
yeah.
want.
so your
Mhm.
tactical decision is don't spend $5,000
Good. Yes.
because you
Thank
don't even
you.
know if that's going to be effective. Maybe
Mhm.
do 250 one time and see if it works at all, right?
Mhm. Well, what I liked about the 250 package, just to give you an example, they give you the people that are looking up, they're in the market for the AI tools, and it's the week of. So it's like real
Yeah, so you
time.
just got to yeah. Don't don't
Mhm.
don't invest too much at your stage uh,
Mhm.
until you've tested and really know that the thing that you think you're going to pay for is at least probabilistically likely to work.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is a perfect
Now,
call
Bobby,
for me.
now
And I
correct me. I want Bobby to correct me.
No, what I'm thinking of, no, you were spot on for sure. I'm a test invest person, fail fast, don't spend. I'm a ghetto gorilla person too. But what one thing that you might want to think about is dirty little secret. Our lead referrals early on, we stuck a gold vein in the Intuit ecosystem because all these accountants did something for these small businesses that you're trying to get to called I did their books. Well, imagine if you went to these accountants and you said, imagine if your customer came to you and actually could show, here's my customers, here's what I sold them, here's what they paid me. And it wasn't the accounting software. And they went, oh my God, that'd be great. Well, how would they do that? We have the CRM system and you can get them up and running and we'll give a special price. And the next thing I know, I had 25,000 accountants pushing my product.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Off
actually very.
balance sheet resources, didn't pay them a dime, rewarded them for performance, and it was a milk machine.
So, Bobby, that's actually interesting because I used to be in commercial lending and we used Intuit for our leads. I worked for PayPal, so
Okay.
we would use Intuit for the leads, and that's exactly it had all the information scrubbed out for us. So that's a really good idea too. You guys are really giving me some great tools here, and I appreciate this meeting. Thanks so much.
Most
Awesome.
certainly. All right. So
Yeah.
I've read a lot about the chicken and egg problem for new marketplaces from a business model perspective, but not from a product building perspective. What insights do you have building the tech of a marketplace when both sides need to be built? I'm probably not the right architect or person to talk to I would give you a half-assed answer that I don't really like giving. So I'll tell you that at the beginning. As I think through it though, there definitely is a chicken egg. So unless you're extremely well financed, where you could buy the marketplaces. And we're going to talk about this because there's a lot of things that had this chicken and egg problem around something we do every day. Bob, what is it we do every day?
Brush our teeth.
We do that. We drive cars typically. And if you look at the amount of money that went into the car marketplaces, Vroom, Zoom, Doom, Loom, like everyone had one because every VC wanted to go get wealthy and they all got $100 million. And now you and I could go get cheap cars because they had to finance us buying from them to show that they had traffic, right? So they paid for us to come to their marketplace. None of them really worked because it wasn't a true marketplace. I actually believe there's a fundamental problem with how you transfer cars state to state, which goes back to your question. Can you solve a big problem with a small problem solve?
I'll add to that, Bobby. So marketplaces typically have a patient side and an impatient side, and you need to make sure that by the time the impatient side gets to your marketplace, they're not disappointed. If they find a ghost town, they're going to be you're going to have to win them back again. So whatever you build, remember that you have to get the patient side engaged early, so that you can build that traction with them. So that when you bring in the impatient side, there's something for them to do, that they make a connection, that some element of that experience pleases them. So, and one of the ways that you do that is you pick the smallest possible market you can service. One of my favorite paradigms is, if you're going to do, like, if you want to do another Craigslist, you would start on a college campus, right? You don't start with, we're going to go be a Craigslist killer and we're going to launch across the United States. You'd say, where's the one small ecosystem that I can get traction in? And then I'll find the next one and the next one and the next one. So if you're building a marketplace, start as small as you possibly can, identify who the patient side is and who the impatient side is, and make sure that you get enough of the patient side onboarded, because it's usually the seller. It's like, it doesn't cost me anything. I just put my shit up there and like maybe somebody buys it. Okay, I got lots of channels. That's just another channel. I'll put my stuff up there. The people who are there to buy, you can disappoint them very, very easily. So you need to have some critical mass of traction before that impatient side gets too involved. All right. We're at 2:30. Bobby, this is fun. Thank you so much. I just want you to share what you shared with me backstage before we came on. I asked you a question about the experience that you have that you value the most, and how do you think about your experience and how that forms you as a person, not just as a technologist, an investor or a founder, but as a person.
I distilled it down to the people that I've met along my journey, because the people then really unfold the experience, which then unfolds the opportunity, which then, if you take advantage of it, you can make the most of it. And I think that people don't really follow that trail much. And I say those people along the journey, I shared with you, I started in this 37 years ago. The fact that I talked to their children who run the company, I think is a testament to underscore that fact. right? I mean, Danny and I are friends and we communicate on a regular basis, and you know, that's probably weird in a way if you think, because I don't have anything to do with it. I work for his dad.
Yeah.
Now they're in the industry, and so that does. And I shared with you a founder that we had a successful exit I spoke to yesterday, who reached out of the blue and he wanted to ask some questions. And I loved catching up with Lars. One, we were saying, wow, one, I'll be honest, the intellectual stimulation gets me going. Which you usually get conversing to other, you know, to two intelligent people or smarter than me. And so along that, I would say my best prized possession is the relationships that I've made. And it's a testament to the importance that I think that they are. And I believe that that's also helped me in my success in this journey, because I can call up people and ask a question and not feel like I'm asking for a favor. Because as a connector, most know they can ask me for anything, and I'll be more than happy to facilitate or intro or help out, just because, again, all boats rise in the tide, and I'm here to help.
That's true. Well, thanks for helping out here. I really appreciate it. And all that resonates with me as well. Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me. I appreciate it.